Extreme radio for extreme times. This is A View from Space with the Spaceman on Talk Radio AM 640.
I'm the guy they call Spaceman. This is A View from Space. I'd like to welcome you in if you're driving around right now, or if you're at work listening to AM 640, picking up the show there. I welcome you in. Or if you're listening to me right now on Shaw Direct on channel 865, picking up the signal there, I welcome you in. If you're listening to me on your 3 or 4G personal communication device via the Stream the World software, welcome you in too. Or if you're what some call the best seat in the house, sitting in front of your Mac or your PC, at home, logged on to 640toronto.com, picking up the live audio streaming there. I welcome you in. Wherever you are in the world, I welcome you in. I have a few phrases I repeat on the show, and if you are a regular listener, you'll know the ones. One of them's my focus tonight. It's this one. The fictions in the news and the truths in the movies. The Illuminati use the entertainment to brainwash. They show you the future they're going to bring about. So when it really happens, you're psychologically prepared for it. You are going to accept it easier because you've already seen it. And with entertainment, you don't have to physically go through something to experience it. An emotional experience is also very powerful. That's what the entertainment, actual brainwashing, is all about. It's been all through the movies. It's been all through television shows, all through the videos you watch. It's called predictive programming in psychology. And as I speak to you tonight, the war in Ukraine is in a very, very precarious ceasefire hold, but it won't hold. I know. I've seen the future. It'll only get worse with NATO getting involved down the road, and this Nemtsov murder case in Russia will play a role too. This Russian enemy is being built up, and it was shown to you for almost a decade 5 years ago. Let me start here. If you've ever seen Stanley Kubrick's movie called 2001: A Space Odyssey, you may have said to yourself, or possibly to somebody you know, in a conversation about it, that you came away confused, not sure of what you actually witnessed and what messages the director was actually trying to convey to you. It's always been very apparent to me that its meaning is overtly satanic. If you know about Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick's other films, it becomes clear why this is this way. Put it very simply, 2001: Space Odyssey, the movie, points out that all of mankind are ignorant, backward, selfish, uncaring, wasteful, superstitious, lost beings who are in desperate need of spiritual leadership. A God to show the rest of us the true way and to rule over us all. That is the state that all of mankind is currently in. Oh, with one exception. That's right. With one exception alone. And that exception is a small collection of people of elite status who believe they are the enlightened beings, better than the rest of anyone else, no better, no more, whose ancestors were We're self-anointed gods that traveled to Earth from another planet in our solar system over 4 million years ago in a search for gold, a commodity critical to the survival of their own planet. We're told it was needed to repair their atmosphere, the gold. I've been referring to this group over the years as the Illuminati, who say they are enlightened. That's why. The Illuminati. This small group possesses all the wealth in this world, really, to speak of, controlling all of the currencies, all of the banks, all of the big corporations, meaning your job and my job. All sources of fuels, food, transportation, you name it. And through that, in turn, governments of countries are easily controlled and manipulated, too, to do the bidding of this very small but extremely powerful elite group. They also use this power they possess to program, brainwash the world using the mass media, the internet, the television, the radio, news organizations, the publishing business, the print media, newspapers, magazines, to reach all with their messages, which they also own and control to promote their own agenda, which is, make no mistake, to make their false god, the one who gives them all their power, Lucifer, the bringer of light, who enlightens them, who is really Satan, the god, to rule us all. That's where we're going. You and I, believe it or not, want to go along with it or not, are living someone else's dream. So to bring this dream about, this great work, this global governance, to bring it about and make all mankind complicit, they use the power they hold tightly to cause recessions, depressions, bubbles that always follow with a world war. That's always been the way of history. Always pitting one side against the other to cause the heat. The heat being deflation, which is coming. Inflation, taxation, legislation, racism, religion, greed, fear, anything that causes instability. Then the world is hit with a hammer, meaning wars. The small elite group I refer to. See, wars aren't, they're sold to us in a way where we think it's a system against a system, our way of life against another's way of life, which is, ours is better. But wars are fought for a very different reason with the elite. The real reason they're fought. It's about subjecting you all to the most abhorrent thing so that you will comply, be complicit, and do their bidding. And do as they say and as they see fit. It's the Spaceman, Talk Radio, AM 640. Coming back with the evidence of this predictive programming, with Russia included, when I return on Talk Radio, AM 640. I'm just getting started. I'm the guy that calls space. This is a view from space. Communicate by email only, spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. And thank you for the one you've sent. I really appreciate it. I really do. Yes, what they're after is to make you complicit. Our overlords, the one who control your economy, the ones who call the shots, the ones who plan the future for mankind, the ones who believe they have this power and influence and profess to know the real truth of who we really are and where we come from and are going to prove it. And where we're headed, they're going to show you. They possess this diabolical, holier-than-thou attitude. They are bound and determined to push their insane agenda on the entire inhabitants of this earth in the form of a one-world government. They're going to make it so abhorrent here for you that you will want and accept anything. And they've been showing it to you, as I'm going to get to in tonight's show. One kingdom, one king, headed up by the Antichrist, who is a man known as the willful king, who, after receiving a seemingly fatal head wound, because it's all in your predictive programming, all the way through your childhood, all the fairy stories, seemingly fatal head wound, then becomes alive again, receives a fatal head wound, becomes alive again, then will become possessed by Satan and come back from the dead to claim to be divine and will demand to be called God. Here's some examples of thought control in the Illuminati-controlled voice, picture, and print media pushing this agenda I just talked about. Photos taken of ancient hieroglyphics on different sites, different visits by individuals to Egypt distinctively show a military-looking helicopter, an airplane, a submarine, and even some kind of alien spacecraft. Photos which accompany this article were supposed to have been taken in 1996 and 1997. The article goes on to say that these ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics that show a military-looking helicopter constitute apparent evidence of time travel related to manipulative extraterrestrial infiltration of Earth-bound human society. That's how they phrase it. Notice they said apparent evidence, constitutes apparent evidence of time travel related to this. It didn't say, here's absolute proof, or here's irrefutable evidence, or it didn't say, here's the scientific experiments that were performed over and over and over and over and always came up with the same result, therefore it is true. This so-called ancient Egyptian carving in rock confirms extraterrestrials visited Earth thousands of years ago, the Illuminati want you to believe. It is the hieroglyphics. They constitute apparent evidence of time travel related to manipulative extraterrestrial infiltration. There's a huge difference. It merely infers that this is so, that it's true, leaving those who want to believe to take it as truth. That's hard evidence from archaeologists who, after all, are supposedly experts, when in reality, many times, most times, these days, well, all the time now, the experts are just high-placed men whose job it is to convince you of this alien lie. The glyphs only suggest the extraterrestrials have shown an interest and have demonstrated the capability to rule over humanity. The glyphs also only suggest that similar technologies today that apparently existed thousands of years ago may have originated from a similar source. The operative word here, may have. The article goes on to state Dr. Michael Salla has suggested the current existence of a military-industrial extraterrestrial complex that has access to exotic technologies, which include things like time travel. If these technologies existed thousands of years ago, wouldn't time travel by a related group account for the reintroduction of the same technologies? After the doctor poses that question, because almost everyone respects doctors, don't they, and deems them all experts, don't they, another collaborating so-called expert is brought in. But not just any old expert. No. Someone who has been brainwashed, groomed, then placed into a very high position of power. Enter retired NATO commander, Rhodes Scholar, and 4-star General of the United States of America, Wesley Clark. Remember him? The guy who showed you through the Gulf War when it first broke out, when they first got into this terror thing, which is their main baby now. Yeah. He made late October 2003 entry to the 2004 U.S. presidential race also. And following a successful draft campaign, made comments in reference to time travel as he was getting prepared to run for president, as an important area of research that was quite attainable. Then the article went on to state confirmation that the experts are correct. And I quote again from the article again, perhaps according to scholarly testimony like Dr. Sala and other researchers of UFO phenomenon, such technology has already been developed. Let me continue with the article. Talking about time travel here. Bill Hobbs goes even further and says that Wesley Clark said when he was campaigning for the U.S. presidency that he thinks that time travel's possible and that it will be accomplished. And he strongly implied that as president, he would openly allocate federal dollars to develop it. If such an exotic technology was already developed, then the elites who presided over any such technology would be able to evaluate the American public's reaction to such information, wouldn't they? Could time-traveling manipulative extraterrestrials that's presided over the destruction of previous human other civilizations here on Earth use time travel as a means of selectively seeking to influence other races at different stages of their technological development of various planetary civilizations? Because many people think, that aliens have given us this digital world that we're now using. In 1848, one of the numerous archaeological expeditions working in Egypt discovered strange hieroglyphs at the height of about 10 meters right above the entrance to the Seti temple and Abydos. The walls were apparently covered with the strange signs that greatly puzzled the researchers, of course. The same story as in Egypt. The only thing the researchers realized at once was that they had discovered some images of strange mechanisms that nobody ever saw before. The archaeological expedition carefully copied the mysterious signs on the temple walls, and the hieroglyphs gave rise to endless disputes, by the way, and heated debates among Egyptologists. And as a result, the majority of those specialists on Egyptology arrived at a conclusion that at that time there were just strange objects drawn in different variations. Now, researchers of the 19th century failed to understand what ancient Egyptians actually drew on the temple walls. Like any sensation, the mysterious Abydos hieroglyphs were absolutely forgotten sometime later. In about 150 years, the respectable Arab newspaper Al-Sharq al-Awsat published a very evocative group of photos taken in the Amun-Ra temple in Carnac in Egypt. At that, the newspaper asked its readers whether they believed the ancient Egyptians knew about battle aviation, spacecraft. The photos showed an ancient artist of engraving a battle helicopter with a distinct rotor and a distinct tail unit on it. Thousands of years ago. Nearby, the artist depicted several other aircraft too, astonishingly resembling supersonic jet fighters and heavy strategic bombers. This is a Russian article from their newspaper Pravda, government run. Had the headline, "Ancient Egyptians used helicopters and airplanes for battles." Pravda documents that after the thought-provoking publication of the photos, it became pretty clear why Egyptologists of the 19th century could only not tell what was depicted on the walls of the temple in Abydos. So the conclusion was that in the 19th century, the researchers had never seen a helicopter, never saw jet fighters. Another groomed for the job and carefully planted expert, well-known Egyptologist Alan Alford, left for the Nile banks to study the Abydos mystery also. Now, this researcher studied the mysterious hieroglyphs and made sure that what seemed absolutely incredible was in fact real. So, Alan Alford told journalists that ancient Egyptians had depicted a real helicopter model as if they made the engravings from life. Some of the depictions by the artist thousands of years ago are still apparently unknown. These photos were met with the usual attempts by, the other side of a modern era, who are paid by the establishment, who operate a cloak of secrecy to spin an accompanying web of deceit and disinformation about all of this. And everyone begins talking about it. Soon, it moves into the acceptance stage. But it's not fact at all. Space back with more. Flip side of this break on Talk Radio, AM 640. I'm a guy that calls space. It's a view from space. Emails only, please. Spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Predictive programming. Showing you the future in our entertainment. I've talked about it from time to time here on the show. And it's just the fact that the Russians have become an actual enemy in the last few months. Yeah, believe it or not, the last few months only, already a shooting war with the West. Already the West talking about putting in troops to fight the Russians in Ukraine. The predictive programming 5 years ago had it on for a decade, this particular fight. And with a whole bunch more of what I'm talking about right now, of extraterrestrials. So once everyone starts to talk about extraterrestrials and we are bombarded with images and entertainment galore about it, people tend to believe that we're not alone. Then they get to the point where now they're adamant that we are not alone and there are aliens. And there are shows on the air, the radio shows on the air, that actually promote that the extraterrestrials are out there watching us. The government knows it, but is keeping it from you because they don't want to panic you by announcing it. So the hoax is on. And the programming has been absolutely over the top on aliens and on war. You have to admit that. So why I brought it to your attention tonight is because of the Russian factor and what is going to happen in the near future there. Zachariah Stitchin, researcher, also has a ton of support and eyewitness accounts, actually, by indigenous and other peoples about numerous skulls of a humanoid extraterrestrial hybrid race that have actually been photographed. The skulls have been photographed in Egypt. Oh, it's running thick. I mean, now that we have actual bones, it can't be long now before there actually are going to be manifest in front of us. I've talked about this before many times. Now, Joel Mills, in the process of producing a CD-ROM called The Secrets of Stargate, by the way, Stargate Universe, I'll get to that in a minute, but it's a military science fiction franchise that ran for 10 years. It was television, it was a movie. And this is where the programming for the Russians and the Americans in the space program was all rolled up into one, as well as this extraterrestrial part of the equation. In other words, our future showing to you what they're actually going to bring about here on Earth in the third dimension. Joel Mills was in this process of producing this Secrets of Stargate, sought to collect photographs of giant skulls of apparent humanoid extraterrestrial hybrid races that he heard about, promoting it. These skulls were later apparently censored from the producing of this ROM. We can't let the truth out. It'll scare all of the backward and superstitious, unwashed, unenlightened human beings here on Earth, so we can't show that. Supposedly, these skulls, though, were so numerous in the area of the Nazca Desert in South America that you can find small makeshift museums in the backyards of the locals that live there with these humanoid skulls as decorations. These are the skulls that have an unusual shape to them, that belong to a certain tribe of peoples who were being pawned off as alien creatures. No, believe it, this is exactly what's actually happening. That's the real truth. And you won't find that on very many radio shows, by the way, on the airwaves. Joel Mills, the guy I told you about the processing of this CD-ROM, The Secrets of Stargate, has to do with this Stargate Universe franchise of television and a movie. He believed that these alien skulls and related artifacts actually proved that the original Stargate film, made in 1994, of an interstellar time teleportation mechanism could not simply be some sort of science fiction fantasy, but in actual fact, real. This is all part of the lies injected into people's minds via movies. Believe it. He said these alien skulls that they couldn't show you, and the related artifacts that went with them that were in these grave sites in South America, at the Nazca Desert, who are actually alien creatures, when in actual fact, they're just a certain tribe of peoples that are being pawned off as these because they have an unusual shape to their skulls. But they pick up on it, and it becomes proof of interstellar time teleportation, and aliens exist. All part of the lie. Now you see, the film Stargate and the later developed television series was based on this storyline. The United States civilian government holds the Stargate's existence a secret. So, the Stargate, by the way, is a spaceship that you can go to Jupiter and back. And you know the long journey? Forget about it, you're sleeping. They put you to sleep on it. Well, that was the premise. The United States civilian government holds the Stargate's existence a secret from the people. So storylines present no contradiction between the episode's events and reality. In the story, many Earth mythologies are in fact based upon events involving aliens who visited or controlled Earth's civilizations in the distant past. Exactly the premise the Illuminati want to portray. You see, it all gets spun into the Illuminati agenda that they are half man, half God, and were fathered by aliens. These are their relatives. It's high-stakes propaganda, and it's real. It's the dream they're having that you and I are forced to live. Stargate's a military science fiction franchise, as I said, which in the beginning was conceived by Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin. And the first film in the franchise was simply titled Stargate. It was originally released on October 28th, 1994 by a couple of Illuminati-controlled companies, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Carloco. Now, it was released worldwide. Anything the Illuminati do goes global, because that's only what they're interested in. 3 years later, Brad Wright, Jonathan Glassner create a television series called Stargate SG-1 as a sequel for the flick to further perpetuate this propaganda. And I mean, they really ran with this one because they had a good one. They had it all packed into one. All of their messages packed into one. The man is God, one coming to save us all, aliens, the whole bit, extraterrestrials, as well as the movie and television. The Stargate franchise has expanded supplements to the film. Television series were used to take the development of the show's fictional universe and mythology to an even deeper and wider level. I mean, they went right to where they want to go. Atlantis. There was one called Stargate Atlantis. In 2008, the year of the financial crash that we have never recovered from, the film Stargate, The Ark of Truth and Continuum were released, direct to DVD. And in 2002, the premise was then aimed at children. Only children. Get them early. Brainwash them is the name of the game. The franchise's first animated series, Stargate Infinity, began airing, which contained the Stargate SG-1 inspired plot. In 2004, the television series Stargate Atlantis was released as a spin-off from the Stargate SG-1, and yet a third series, see, I told you they'd run with this one, called Stargate Universe, premiered on October of 2009. Now, it's a science fiction television and, like I said, MGM's Stargate franchise movie. It's about the adventures of a present-day multinational exploration team traveling on the ancient spaceship called Destiny. Yes, the destiny of man, see? It's in the cards. The ancient spaceship called Destiny. It's the Stargate. Over several billion light years, distant from the Milky Way galaxy. Now, they evacuated Earth a long time ago, and now are trying to figure out a way to return to Earth, while simultaneously, of course, trying to explore and to survive their unknown area of the universe, running into all kinds of aliens and other planets and things like that. You know, the usual. Oh, and by the way, if you doubt me about fiction in the news and the truth in the movies, do you know who was consulted on the script for this? The United States Air Force and Marine Corps. They reviewed it. For what? Accuracy, of course, and for the correct story to be there. Because all of the brainwashers are military people. That's where it's all begun. interrogation to start with. Space, back with more on the other side of the break on Talk Radio, AM 640. This is APFS. I'm the guy to call Space. You can email me. Spaceman at 640toronto.com is one address. The other is space at 640toronto.com. I appreciate them so much, and I thank you for the one that you've sent. SR writes, you mentioned Carnac, Egypt. Johnny Carson during the Tonight Show, with that long reign, talk about programming people, played this skit with him being the great Carnac. I don't know if you ever witnessed a Johnny Carson television show, but he'd play this character called the Great Carnac, had this big turban on, and would hold up an envelope to his forehead, to his third eye, actually, in between his two eyes, above in the forehead. And his sidekick would ask the question, and the answer would be in this alleged hermetically sealed envelope that he would hold to his head, and he would read through, with his mind, read through the envelope as he'd hold it up and go, okay, this is what it says inside without opening it. Johnny Carson was Masonic. And in Carson's Carnac Act, he would predict the envelope's contents with a clever phrase, and of course it was always a kicker to a joke. So you see, even then, Hermes is the great sun god of Egypt. Hermes in the Greek. Same spirit. And I say that Johnny Carson and those people that are programming those little bits know exactly what they're doing. I don't believe it's an accident or a coincidence that it just happened to be a guy named Carnac with a turban that could predict the future. No, the elites know our future. They're guiding our future. So, Stargate Productions centers on the premise of a Stargate, a ring-shaped alien device that creates a wormhole enabling personal transportation, time travel, to complementary devices located cosmic distances away. Under the control of the United States government, the Stargate discovered on Earth is kept a secret from the public. This allows for storylines to present no contradiction between the depicted events and reality, as I stated before. Now, in this story, it's explained as being the result of an alien interference on Earth's distant past. The concept, influenced by the theories of Erich von Däniken. Erich von Däniken is a Swiss author, by the way, best known for his controversial claims about, what else? Extraterrestrial influences on early human culture. In books like Chariots of the Gods, put out I think in 1968, Däniken is one of the main figures chosen, groomed, and made famous by the Illuminati's media propaganda machine, responsible for popularizing the paleo contact theory. That's his job, which holds that paleo contact theory holds that human beings are either the descendants or creations of aliens who landed on Earth a millennia ago, or that most of our culture was given to us by extraterrestrial visitors in the time of prehistory. This author, Däniken, is also co-founder of the Archaeology, Astronautics, and SETI Research Association. You see what I mean? SETI is the organization, government funded, that's actually, by the Americans, that's actually looking for alien contact. And he also designs, Däniken, the theme park called Mystery Park in Interlaken, Switzerland, the home of the Illuminati. That first opened, that park, Mystery Park in Interlaken in Switzerland. Opened May 23rd, 2003. Notice anything about the numbers? May 23, 2003. That's a double 2-3. 2003. Drop the zeros, 2-3. The day, May 2-3. The number 23, as I've stated many times on AVFS, Talk Radio, AM 640, is given to people or events that will affect every single person on the face of this earth deeply, spiritually even. Däniken's also written 26 books, which have been translated into more than 20 languages. More than 60 million copies have been printed and distributed worldwide. Getting the word out? Oh, yeah. Oh, and he's on TV, too. Erich von Däniken's documentary television show, viewed around the world. One of the main men propagating the lie that many ancient mythologies are shown to be the result of aliens who visited Earth posing as gods by using their technology to give you the impression that they were of this deific power, these gods. The propaganda states that while some of these aliens and benign intentions, a race later known as Stargate SG-1 as the Goa'uld, how close is that to the word gold, used Stargate to move slaves from ancient Egypt to other inhabitable planets, simultaneously being responsible for the Egyptian religion and culture. That's what the elite actually believe. Could I just go through that again one more time to make sure that you understand it? This propaganda states that while some of these aliens had benign intentions, they were friendly, a race later known as Stargate SG-1 in that television show as the Goa'uld, very close to gold, right, used Stargates to move slaves, humans, from Earth to other habitable planets. And also, while they were doing it, being responsible for the Egyptian religion and culture, of which the Illuminati have picked up the drawings on the walls and carried out and have said, this looks like it's all true. Following a successful rebellion, they flee Earth. And the Stargate was buried and forgotten until modern times. In this series, when the United States acquires it following an archaeological dig of all things. Yes, you always dig up the truth, don't you? Isn't it funny how everyone believes that if you've dug it up from an archaeological site, it's proof of truth? Well, somebody just put it there. What if making the wrong assumption of what it actually even is? Anyway, with the rediscovery of the function of the Stargate that they discovered at an archaeological dig, a galaxy becomes a source of knowledge, as well as threats. And the attention of the Goa'uld, these alien bad guys, are drawn once more to Earth. There's that word again, eerily similar to gold, isn't it? Well, isn't gold down here what everyone flees to when currencies no longer, have slipped and being devalued to zero, which is soon going to happen? Why is gold so dearly beloved by the Illuminati, the bloodline of Cain, who were the Hyksos, by the way, who taught the ancient pharaohs the idea of eating a powder made from gold that was used in initiation to higher levels of consciousness? What was really happening is they were getting stoned and coming so close to death, but not quite dying, therefore opening up to all kinds of hallucinations and illusions, opening up to demonic possession, which in turn would give a pharaoh knowledge. It was at Carnac, strangely enough. In about 1450 BC, Pharaoh Thutmose III founded his metallurgical fraternity of master craftsmen with 39 members on the High Council. They were called the Great White Brotherhood, a name which, it was said, taken from their preoccupation with the mysterious white powder of projection. You'd take this and become enlightened, and soon only eating that and no longer any food. 39 members on the High Council. You know what 39 is? It's 13 times 13. That's the Illuminati leaving their mark. A double 13. That's the group 13. Fascinated by 13. Netanyahu's speech to the United States government this past week was exactly, I timed it myself, exactly 39 minutes. 13 times 13. Yes, you see, the Egyptian kings were ingesting this mysterious white powder of projection. Let me finish that when I return on the other side of this break on Talk Radio AM 640. It's the Spaceman. Apple's gonna come up and Steve Jobs. Just you wait. I'm a guy that calls space. It's View from Space. Emails to spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. I've got a couple of addresses for you to use. You got some information you'd like to pass along, you got a critique of the show, or just want to say hi, where in the world you're listening to AVFS from, Talk Radio, AM 640. Thank you for the one that you've sent. Before the break, I was talking about the Goa'uld, not gold, as in the precious metal, but the Goa'uld, which were the evil aliens in the Stargate Universe franchise. And of course, gold is the original reason that aliens, supposedly by the Illuminati's take, came to Earth to get gold because it was going to fix their environment back in their home planet. So they were mining gold here. And later on even took slaves from here, the extraterrestrials did, and transported them to other worlds to be slaves there. And of course, gold takes its power from this story. And they would actually eat a white powder of crushed gold, monoatomic gold as it's called. And of course it got you very high, took you very close to death without going over, because the pharmacologists who fed the pharaohs and who fed the initiates this monoatomic crushed white ground up gold would just take them to the point of hallucinations, but not death. It was calculated through, of course, experimentation on slaves, on how much do they ingest before they die, and then get the mean amount, the average amount from so many times you've done it and killed so many people, give it to the pharaoh and allow him to have the experience. That was the basis of gold in ancient Egypt, not as monetary. It was gaining knowledge through this close coming to your death in using this monoatomic gold, poisoning yourself, basically. And they believed that it was the spirits that were giving them the knowledge passed on from other races. The Egyptian kings were ingesting this white manna of gold from around 2180 BC, it says in history, but only the metallurgical adepts of the mystery schools, the master craftsmen, knew the secret of its manufacture, and the ultimate high priest of Memphis held the title of great artificer, who knew exactly how much to give you. The terminal enlightenment, or as the Greeks called it, gnosis, was an idea of perpetual quest. As against the physical body, one also was reckoned to have a light body which similarly had to be fed so as to be nurtured and to grow, right? This light body, I'm talking about light as in electric light. The light body was called the Ka. And although essentially an intangible feature of life, it's said to remain active in the afterlife also. This can be also seen in other eyes as your soul. The food of the Ka was light, which generated enlightenment. Light, of course, when you hear the Illuminati talk about it, it's knowledge. And the generative substance of light was this white powder of gold. The powder is also mentioned in an Alexandrian document called the Ether Alexandri ad Paradisium, which is an old parable of Alexander the Great's journey to paradise, the kingdom of Ahura Mazda, the Persian god of light. The account features the enchanted paradise stone, this white monoatomic gold, which had numerous magical properties, and was said to outweigh its own quantity of gold, although when transposed to a powder, even a feather could tip the scales against it. And, of course, to get into the netherworld, one of the tests to see the afterlife, the test to see if you were worthy, was a test called the weighing of the Ma'at, where a feather must tip the scales or outweigh your heart. You have a heavy heart, many things on your heart that you're sorry for, the feather would not tip the scales. You must be carefree. So, guess what the trick was to get into the afterlife as thought by the ancient pharaoh and by the great artificer, the ultimate high priest of Memphis, and the metallurgical mystery school. Well, it was the ingestion of the white gold. It gets this job done. Holding this information in mind while remembering that all the aspects of such discoveries have been a constant source of bewilderment for historians, people who've researched religion, and even scientists, we can now move forwards in time to our present era. The one you and I are living in, the light of the ancient world returning to ancient Egypt. You find further references to white gold powder at various sacred locations. One of these relates to the treasures of Pharaoh Thutmose III, as reproduced in a bas relief at the Temple of Carnac. In the metals section, there are a number of cone-shaped objects. They're explained as being made of gold, but carry the rather odd description, white bread. So it's clear that the Illuminati want this lie of extraterrestrials being our gods to be propagated all over the world. It's because the Antichrist will also not eat food. in his last days, but only ingest this white powder of gold wafers. There's more in the myth that's destined to be presented as the truth. In 1994, the military science fiction film Stargate released, directed by Emmerich, co-written by Dean Devlin. The film lays the foundation for all the Stargate productions that came after it by explaining the notion, function, and history of the Stargate. Now, the theatrical version of the film begins with the unearthing of the Stargate at Giza, of course, in Egypt, in 1928. As of present day, the failing Egyptologist Daniel Jackson, James Spader, plays the role, helps to make the Stargate work again by deciphering the hieroglyphics on the cover stones of the Stargate, now housed at a military base in Creek Mountain, Colorado. A team led by Colonel Jack O'Neill, played by Kurt Russell, is ordered to step through the Stargate and identify potential military threats on the other side. Jackson accompanies them to aid in translations to allow them to return home later. At their arrival, the team discovers a slave civilization serving an alien who is posing as the Egyptian god Ra. He and his mini-gods have taken human form, commanding the slaves with brute force. Don't lose focus here now. These are men who are possessed by demons, and it's really the demons only who claim that they're from outer space. Speaking, of course, from inside the possessed men. With the help of the locals, O'Neill's team is eventually able to instigate a slave rebellion. Overwhelming Ra's forces, Ra escapes in his mother's mothership, but O'Neill is able to teleport and detonate a nuclear warhead on board Ra's ship in orbit. More on the other side of the break. Talk Radio, AM 640, I'm Space. I'm the guy to call Space. This is a view from space. Talk Radio, AM 640. Got an email? Got two addresses for you. Spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Thanks for the one you sent. Now, a theatrical version of the film Stargate has the Stargate discovered. It's sort of a machine that allows you to go through it, and then once you're through it, get into a whole different universe and do time travel. Well, a man has chosen to do this at a very, very, very secret military base in Colorado, and he steps through it, gets into a world with a slave civilization serving an alien who's posing as the Egyptian god Ra in this world. So, he actually foments a rebellion, wins, in actual fact, saving and taking the slaves and making them free. He's their savior, basically. And with the help of the locals, O'Neill's team is eventually able to instigate this huge overtaking of Ra's forces. Ra, though, escapes as usual because the devil always escapes. You can't kill him. But O'Neill is able to teleport and detonate a nuclear warhead on board Ra's ship, who is already in orbit. Now, that kills Ra. The civilization can now live in peace. O'Neill and his team then return home through the Stargate, but Daniel Jackson stays on the planet with a young local woman named Shari. Ra, by the way, is, of course, the ancient Egyptian mystery religion god. Now, that's basically the premise for the movie. In 1997, a couple of other men carry on the story. Jonathan Glassner, Brad Wright, they developed Stargate SG-1. It's a television series spun off this motion picture, intended to continue the story laid down by the original film I just told you about. Although new actors were cast, several roles like Jack O'Neill, which was respelled to include an extra L, by the way, on the end of O'Neill. I don't know why. Maybe he just, was promoted or something. The Stargate Command Center was also transferred from a fictional military facility called Creek Mountain, Colorado, to a real military complex known as the Cheyenne Mountain Military Complex in Colorado itself. The real one. So, as with the Star Command Center, going from a fictional place to a real place, I tell you now, the same step will also be followed to go from story from a myth to the truth, or as it's perceived to be the real truth. This will be portrayed as gospel. Other variations and differences between the original film and SG-1 mostly concern the location of the planet Abydos, the alien Ra, the race of Ra's underlings, Jaffa, and Stargate travel. That series debuted on Showtime 97, moved to the Sci-Fi Channel after its 5th season, starred Richard Anderson as O'Neill and Michael Shanks as Jackson alongside Amanda Tapping. Chris Judge and Don Davis played the new characters Samantha Carter, TLC, and George Hammond. Now, the cast remained fairly regular for most of Stargate 1's run, but experienced some changes. Shanks leaves the show at the end of the season 5, replaced by Carnac, and Shanks returns at the beginning of season 7, and Nemec was written out of it. At the end of season 7, Davis left the show and Anderson filled the gap he left in the story. Season 9 saw the departure of Anderson, but added a couple of new regulars, Beau Bridges, Ben Browder. After a debut episode in season 8, followed by appearances in 8 episodes of season 9, Claudia Black became a member of the regular cast in season 10. It went on for a long time. MGM put an average of 1,400,000 into each episode of the show and saw it as one of its most important franchises because of the message. Stargate was taken off the air in 2007, but 2 movies entitled Stargate, The Ark of Truth, and Stargate Continuum were made to tie up loose ends. I mean, to keep the story out there. That's the important part. To where this new paradigm shift that's supposedly going to happen is going with the Illuminati's direction. Now, since the Illuminati want badly to bring back what they call this golden age of Atlantis, written about by Sir Francis Bacon back in Elizabeth I's day, and even farther back in history than that, to ancient Greek philosopher Plato, where the first recorded mentions come from of Atlantis. The Illuminati would surely have to include the story of Atlantis in their Stargate series of stories, don't you think? Well, of course they did. It was called the Stargate Atlantis series. The Stargate Atlantis series follows the adventures of the Atlantis expedition, a combination of military forces, civilian scientists, which is what's happening now, today, using the military and science / black magic to forward their goal of this one world government that travel to the Pegasus galaxy in search of the lost city of Atlantis, left behind by the most powerful race known to ever have lived, referred to as the Ancients, also known as Lanteans, by the way. Lanterans is another word they used that is very similar to Atlanteans, isn't it? Yes, it was meant to be that way. The finding of the city had been a plot arc for most of SG-1's whole television Season 7 series. And the ancients, the aliens themselves, were a long-running part of the SG-1 plot. Arriving at the city, the expedition discovers the Pegasus galaxy is dominated by a terrible enemy known as the Wraith, and they have to defend themselves against them despite being vastly outnumbered. Stargate Atlantis was a spin-off TV series from Stargate SG-1. A new feature film was originally intended to transition the two series after the 6th season of SG-1. And later, SG-1 was renewed for a 7th season, and the feature film was then planned to transition that season, going from television to the movie. Finally, SG-1 was renewed for an 8th season. The intended film instead became the 2-part season finale episode called Lost City Atlantis. And the setting of Stargate Atlantis was moved to the Pegasus galaxy. This allowed the two shows to exist side by side within the same fictional universe. And later the two shows even became interconnected. Atlantis was developed by the most talented people that MGM had. And it was developed by those same people and in the same studios as SG-1 was. Get it? All working together to become one. Both shows. That's the macro message, all designed to establish as truth that aliens are gods and the Antichrist will be possessed by their leader. Atlantis debuted on the Sci-Fi Channel in 2004. And it ran through the end of the 3rd season, I believe. They made some changes to the cast, and Season 4 brought in a new group of people again as they continued this thing on. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. It was announced that Sci-Fi would actually renew Stargate Atlantis. The final episode ended, though, in 2009, January 1st. And it was the 9th day of that month. They may have taken their precious Atlantis away, but you could bet the storyline brainwashing millions to a lie that's destined to become the truth would continue. And guess what? It did. The 3rd live-action Stargate series premiered October 29th, 2009. And it was set on a ship that was part of an ancient unresolved experiment that was set in motion millions of years ago. Talk about destiny. Remember, that's the name of the Stargate ship, Destiny. Over 50 million years ago, way before their conflict with the Wraith and before they moved Atlantis to the Pegasus galaxy, the show would reveal the ancients, the demons, the aliens, sent out multiple spaceships to place Stargates on many planets throughout multiple galaxies in the universe, and a ship to follow up and explore. A standard 7-symbol gate address allows for travel within the same galaxy. Use of the Stargate's 8th chevron allowed for travel to a different galaxy, and the 9th chevron allowed the team to reach this second ancient ship called the Destiny. How about this? This went on for over 10 years, a decade of programming, and I haven't got to the Russian part yet. That's coming up. It's next on Talk Radio AM 640. I'm the Spaceman. Back with more in a minute. I'm the guy that calls space. It's a view from space. Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to spaceman@640toronto.com or space@640toronto.com. Now, the Illuminati want you to believe that posing as gods, manipulative extraterrestrials were presented as enslaving the inhabitants of ancient Egypt, creating its culture and religion that you're being taught today, when in reality it was the Hyksos, the bloodline of Cain, who first taught the ancient Egyptian pharaohs this huge lie and how to manipulate masses. Anyway, these malevolent aliens were presented as using stargates to move laborers from Earth to other habitable planets in other universes. The aliens were also depicted as being forced to flee Earth following a successful rebellion by the humans, and the Stargate was buried and forgotten till its rediscovery, of course, in Giza, Egypt, 1928 is how the story goes. All designed to get you to believe that extraterrestrials exist, and they're going to prove to be the actual relatives of the Illuminati bloodline elite families. Adolf Hitler has been historically documented as being a member of the UFO-oriented Tula Society before his rise to power. Nazi Germany was allegedly inspired from his contacts with the representatives of alleged Great Pyramid-inspiring extraterrestrial Aryan civilizations. This has been documented in the article called The Aliens of the Golden Dawn. Now, you need to know the Tula Society are the ones who perpetuate the belief that Atlantis is to rise again. I told you to bring back the Golden Age is their goal. Meaning, of course, the Antichrist will set up his kingdom just as the king of Atlantis once did. Poseidon set his up. Atlantis is the template for a one-world government. 10 regions as it was then, it will be on this earth, with 10 rulers reporting to the 11th. The king of all of the 10 regions, and king of kings of the 10 kings being the 11th, the 10 report to. In the book entitled The Dawn of Magic by Louis Pauwels and Jacques Bergier, first published in France, by the way, under the title Le Matin des Magiciens, in 1960, The Morning of the Magicians, Hitler was documented as having indicated, "The new man is living amongst us now. He is here," exclaimed Hitler. Hitler actually went on to say, "I will tell you a secret. I have seen the new man. He is intrepid and cruel. I was afraid of him." And Hitler did not mean he saw the Antichrist, the man who will ultimately be killed by a head wound and then come back to life. The he Hitler was referring to, of course, when he said, "I have seen the new man. He is intrepid and cruel. I was afraid of him," was the one who will take this willful king's body over and possess it. He is Satan himself. Did the same group of time-traveling extraterrestrials that provide military technology that were drawn on the Egyptian glyphs also seek to funnel technology to Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany so as to effectuate an agenda to run planet Earth as Aryan custodial gods over the enslavement of humanity? Local guides in Peru explained their church leaders feel skulls of apparent ancient ruling castes of human-alien hybrids are the work of the devil and the offspring of the fallen angels of the Bible. With this in mind, another of the elevated ones, with the backing of the Illuminati star-making machine, of course. Scholar and author John Lash documents ancient Gnostics as seeking to warn humanity about an intelligent, inorganic life possessing demonic consciousness that were presented in Gnostic cosmology to be archons or fallen angels. His findings supposedly prove that the archonic rulers, the archons, the fallen angels of these apparently technologically advanced societies, share the common bond of huge skulls and brains that probably provided them with highly developed intellectual capabilities. That's their thought. The operative words here, again, though, would be probably provided them with highly developed intellectual capabilities. This information, we're told, has been shared by secret societies and religious leaders for hundreds of years. The Egyptian pictures, carved in stone, the hieroglyphics, have been described by viewers as showing proof of beings from another world interacting with humans. Egypt's most hated king, that I believe President Barack Obama is channeling, by the way, Akhenaten, was born Amenhotep IV, but changed his name and became ruler of an empire, as did Barry Soetoro. Isn't that the original name of Barack Obama? The ruler of the American empire. Both rulers changed their country dramatically, and no one liked any of the changes. Akhenaten changed ancient Egypt, and they hated it. President Barack Obama is changing America, and most hate it. Egypt's king Akhenaten and his daughters were supposedly proud of their distinct features. They had elongated skulls that had been attributed to alien visitors from outer space. The true facts of this royal family are shrouded in controversy, but I believe it was a sickness, inbreeding. The Illuminati grew and educate, brainwash the leading historian to create disinformation about Akhenaten, as he was the very first pharaoh to declare the sun was God, and to talk to God, you had to go through Akhenaten. I believe that the giant skulls of the family of Akhenaten are simply a deformity caused by inbreeding. Now, Ignatius Donnelly, of his book called Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, explores historical accounts of a continent that existed in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean that sank into the sea. He documents that before it sank, the apparent human manipulative extraterrestrial hybrid rulers left for Egypt, Mexico, and Peru, and became rulers of newfound apocalyptic empires with great pyramids that were based around oppressive religious militaristic cults. He found information about elongated apparent alien human hybrid skulls hidden in the Library of Congress in Washington. And maybe the sinking of Atlantis had something to do with a military attempt of these alien human hybrids to seize and take control of Atlantis as an allegedly highly advanced human civilization. That's what they think. The former Peruvian president, Alberto Fujimori, was calling for the release of official photographic documentation about the apparent skulls of this alien human hybrid ruling caste. when the former president of Peru took power, he decided to allow the skulls to be photographed. The Peruvian government indicated to a researcher that these unusual skulls could be found in many museums in Peru, and excavations were uncovering them even now near the Nazca Plateau, as I mentioned earlier in the show. He claims they were evidence of the presence of extraterrestrials in Peru, after, of course, leaving Egypt, going to Mexico and Peru. Yes, they got it all conveniently lined up for you in history and what is about to be revealed as truth. Brad Steiger's book, titled Worlds Before Our Own, presented evidence, too, that previous Earth civilizations were destroyed, possibly by very sophisticated nuclear weaponry, in a catastrophic war on Earth, or maybe even had intergalactic proportions involving different alien civilizations because of the repercussion of the devastation in one part of the universe would affect the other. If this was true, then these glyphs corroborate the other research of a military-industrial extraterrestrial complex that once again may be taking humanity into a path of planetary destruction for whatever alien agenda might exist. Oh, they're going to get us to believe all of this stuff. Believe me, they will. Dr. Sala, a report on the motivations and activities of extraterrestrial races, a typology of the most significant extraterrestrial races interacting with humanity, is published in the Exopolitics Journal in 2005. It's a publication that ties political analysis, activism in with extraterrestrial affairs, believe it or not. Documents that Clifford Stone, a retired U.S. Army sergeant, served in the U.S. Army for 22 years, participated in covert operations to retrieve crashed extraterrestrial ships, and even had extraterrestrial biological entities in his presence, revealed there were a total of 57 extraterrestrial races known by UFO and extraterrestrial disinformation operatives. How about that? Are you buying all of it? Have you bought and drunk the Kool-Aid too? I'm the Spaceman. It's Talk Radio, AM 640. More next. Emails to spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Thanks for the one you sent. Appreciate it. I'm the Spaceman. It's AVFS on Talk Radio, AM 640. Dr. Sala, who wrote a report on the motivations and activities of extraterrestrial races, he revealed that apparent manipulative extraterrestrials, in contrast, of course, with socially responsible and ethical extraterrestrials, yeah, there are good aliens and bad aliens, have sought to introduce military technologies through ego and greed-driven elites that have literally sold their soul to gain access to these technologies. In other words, aliens have coerced our politicians and our business people, swapping information for power with them. This author, Dr. Sala, indicates that manipulative extraterrestrials have exploited short-sighted human elites and have instigated a range of systematic global problems. Terrorism. Dr. Sala puts it this way. If there were, for example, baseball players, football players, as well as track and field stars who were willing to say, well, sell out their personal health by taking steroids in order to get more money, be more powerful, get more glory. Just think how many corrupt human politicians, in turn, would be correspondingly willing to similarly sell out their soul to manipulative aliens, say, in their quest for their sought prize of short-sighted planetary power that's so temporary. He goes on to say, alleged interactions between manipulative extraterrestrial races and empire-driven human elites as having reached agreements with and even collaborated in a number of joint projects already. Let me state here and now, I totally agree with this particular statement. I really do. I do. I don't believe the entities to be aliens, though. I believe them to be demonic spirits who are in the spirit world, who are reached through very strict rituals, using all manner of drugs to attain this knowledge from the demonic world. And what's more, I believe sometimes these men are being lied to by those demons, and sometimes not. This is the source for new ideas in the technological realm, I believe. I believe now where science is getting so close to black magic, it's beginning to pass off black magic as science. Gary McKinnon, in a Wired magazine article titled UFO Hacker Tells What He Found, he declares that he also got access to Excel spreadsheets. One was titled Non-Terrestrial Officers. McKinnon uncovered what he indicated appeared to be orbiting alien spacecraft that would be systematically airbrushed out of high-resolution satellite images. Now, if you're a regular listener to AVFS on Talk Radio AM 640, you've heard me talk about the coming New World Order, which is already in place, operating behind the scenes, having an agenda to strip all of the countries in possession of nuclear weapons, including Israel, as we'll soon see, I believe, and would leave only one, the New World Order Global Military Force, NATO, the new Global Strategic Assistance Force. Leave them with this devastating power of nuclear technology, invoking the words written in the King James Version of the Bible, in which they are going to stick to the letter. Revelation chapter 13, verse 4. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like this beast, who is able to make war with him? This plan is even now being worked out, as the United States and Russia have signed a nuclear missile reduction treaty. This is only the beginning, though. Could nuclear weapons itself, which human elites now seek to threaten Iran and possibly North Korea toward a global nuclear holocaust, also have been introduced through human elite collaborations with manipulative alien toward a global conquest agenda? Are there clues of this very scenario also included in the mythology that you learned in college, that's not yet made out to be truth in history of ancient man, but will be? And the answer is yes, of course. Secrets of the Lost Races. Writer Nick Nurbergen, for example, reveals supposedly scientific research on ancient pyramids that have been in turn linked to human extraterrestrial hybrid races, and he says also demonstrating traces of nuclear radiation consistent with the prehistoric nuclear war. So we're told in South America that Brazilian ruins in Sete Cidades are enormously revealing. Norbergen, in Secrets of the Lost Races, wrote about ruins melted by apocalyptic energies. Elsewhere in Mesopotamia, sizable ziggurats, a form of early pyramid, been found to melt to their base in a vitrified mass. Vitrified, of course, means to be melted into glass. This is the case at Alamogordo, New Mexico, where the first ever test of a nuclear device was exploded, July 16, 1945. It left a crater of radioactive glass in the desert 10 feet deep and 1,000 feet wide. By the way, Stargate Universe, part of those episodes were shot at Alamogordo, Mexico. In the article Nuclear Wars in Antiquity by Harry Hind, he wrote this: in the Arabian desert, blackened stones litter the sands over a wide area, showing signs of having been subjected to, intense radiation. In Israel, the location of the Dead Sea and its mysterious connection with Sodom and Gomorrah says to contain evidence of an amazing focus of heat that is thought to have gouged out that entire area in a massive explosion. Vitrified rock, again rock melted into glass, created under intense pressure. It's a frequent discovery, and in 1952, archaeologists discovered a vitrified area of sand that stretched out over hundreds of square feet. And this guy goes on to say, in fact, wherever we look in the world, the baffling enigma of vitrified ruins challenges our intellect. From Peru to Scotland, Scandinavia to the plateaus of China and India, this indelible evidence attests to some undeniable violent act. Erich von Däniken's Chariots of the Gods presented theories of ancient astronauts made up of possible intergalactic alien invasion forces landing on Earth. The operation could be in our future. The operative words here, too, are possible intergalactic alien invasion force. Possible again, see. Erich von Däniken links Great Pyramid-like structures on Mars even to similar looking to the Great Pyramids on Earth as the alleged basis of fascistic alien colonies on Earth. The heavy documented humanoid face on Mars that has supposedly been subjected to government-directed airbrushing toward an alien disinformation campaign. Yes, they actually have pictures of aliens, but they airbrush them out so as not to scare you. There's also been cited as evidence of alien migrations to Earth that are the bad aliens, the bad type. You've heard the government cover-up stories ad nauseum, I'm sure. Norbergen, the author, states charred ruins were supposedly found between the river Ganges in India and the mountains of Rajamahai. He says the walls have been glazed, corroded, split by tremendous heat. Within several of the buildings that remained standing, even the surfaces of the stone furniture had been vitrified, melted, and then crystallized. It says no natural burning flame or volcanic eruption could have possibly produced heat intense enough to cause this phenomenon. Only the heat released through atomic energy could have done this damage, he claims. Also in the same region, a human body was supposedly discovered with a radioactivity which was 50 times above that normal level it's supposed to be. The sell is on by the Illuminati-controlled, mass-controlled media big time. Why? Because they're getting even closer to the final tipping point of that religious change, of substituting the old religions for the new belief system. Space, back with more next on Talk Radio AM 640. That's me, I'm a Spaceman. It's Talk Radio AM 640. Email me at space640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com. Thanks for the one you sent. Now, most of the Illuminati's disinformation disseminators purport that Gnostic research uncovered shows intrusion by intelligent, inorganic, manipulative extraterrestrials that are native to other planets in our solar system, but are planning to instigate violence amongst humans in a divide, conquest, and rule agenda. Through all of these Illuminati groomed, skilled disinformation artists, it's strongly being suggested to us all that humans must learn from the mistakes committed in the past in what they want you to believe is an apparent previous cycle or cycles of nuclear and general apocalyptic destruction, in order to avoid humanity being once again taken to the edge of total annihilation, this time possibly to us and with it the universe. So now the aliens have to step in because we're getting so close. Is this so-called war on terrorism that will build to a third world war and the use of nuclear weaponry, will it facilitate having the aliens having to show themselves, come to Earth and say, you can't go farther than this, we have to intercede? That's what the Illuminati wants you to believe. This so-called war on terror is an Illuminati ruse for an evolving new world order agenda. It's against human rights, it's against spiritual free will, and it's against countries having their own sovereignty. A coming global conflagration with the threat of history repeating itself, what I just told you about. In the past, they are digging up evidence of past nuclear holocausts, as if to say there's a cycle that is being repeated over and over here on Earth. As one of the sayings that I always state on this show, there's nothing new under the sun. It's simply history repeating itself. And the history of us building up to the technology, getting a great weapon, and destroying ourselves with it. That's the story of Atlantis. Once again, is it going to be played out again with this phony war on terror's build-up for the Third World War? A coming global conflagration with the threat of history repeating itself. Well, our Savior will come, our one leader will come, and guess who it is? It's Lucifer, according to the Illuminati, with just one final act, which would be to possess the willful king who would lead this one world government. Stargate 2010, also known as 2010, the year we made contact. It's a 1984 American science fiction flick. And it's actually a sequel to the 1968 movie 2001, The Space Odyssey, based on Arthur C. Clarke's novel 2010, Odyssey 2, a literal sequel to the film. The movie opens stating that 9 years ago, yes, Satan's favorite number, the American Discovery 1's mission to Jupiter mysteriously fails. As shown in 2001, A Space Odyssey, that movie, the computer on board that runs the ship took the ship over. The rise of the machines. The machine was now calling all the shots. Discovery's HAL 9000 series computer. It malfunctions, kills 4 astronauts. The 5th, David Bowman, disappears into a large alien monolith orbiting the planet. That monolith, by the way, that great big black slab of whatever it is in the form of a rectangle, actually represents knowledge. Now, what happens the 5th? David Bowman disappears into this large alien monolith orbiting the planet. Haywood Floyd, head of the National Council of Astronautics, receives the blame for the failure and left the National Council on Astronautics. And this all happens as tensions between the United States and Russia grows. Exactly what has just manifested here on this earth just a few months prior. Russia and the United States prepare missions to determine what happens to the spaceship Discovery. Although the Russian spaceship Alexei Leonov will be ready for the American spaceship, the Russians need American astronauts to help investigate the HAL 9000 series computer's malfunction and to board an American spacecraft. The U.S. government agrees to a joint mission. Since Discovery will crash into Jovian moon low before its ship is ready, Floyd, Discovery's designer, Walter Kernow, and the HAL 9000 series computer creator, Chandra, join the Russian mission. As the Russian spaceship, Alexei Leonov's arrival into the Jovian system, Captain Tanya Kerbach, played by Helen Mirren, by the way, a dame, also played Queen Elizabeth II in the 2006 movie The Queen, and is a very good friend of Queen Elizabeth II's, by the way. Anyway, she is the captain, the Queen's best friend. And other Soviets with her wake Floyd early from his hibernation, because that's how they travel when there's such long distances. They hibernate, they go into a deep sleep, time travel to another planet. Well, it's all in Stargate. And in this movie 2010, called The Year We Made Contact. So, Floyd suspects that it's a warning to keep away from Europa. He wakes up from his early hibernation, and having detected chlorophyll and other chemical signatures of life on the frozen moon Europa, a burst of electromagnetic radiation destroys an unmanned probe from the Russian ship, and destroys all telemetry records before the probe takes close-up pictures. So this really is a warning to keep away from Europa. After surviving a dangerous aerobraking through Jupiter's atmosphere, Leonov finds Discovery abandoned but undamaged, orbiting the planet close to Io, the moon. We're told Jupiter has 63 confirmed moons, more than any other planet, by the way, with Io being the closest to the planet itself. As a matter of fact, this whole movie 2010, named after the year of 2010, of course, revolved around Jupiter. And some members of the various agencies involved with space probes, Galileo and Cassini, sure have considered the potential of a plutonium ignition upon their impact. And there was also supposed evidence of a suggestion that a reaction is what secretly was hoped for, at least by a few. And William Cooper, the former United States Naval Intelligence man, had a briefing in the early 70s, that when I return on Talk Radio AM 640, who brought up the very same scenario. I'm the guy to call Space. It's View from Space on Talk Radio AM 640. I communicate by email only. Been a lot rolling in tonight. A lot of people's eyes have been opened as to this ruse of, well, extraterrestrials and this war on terror that's looming. So space at 640toronto.com or spaceman at 640toronto.com is how I communicate. And it's by email only. PM writes, how about instead of stargates being gateways for aliens, they could be gateways for demons to come through into this world of ours from the spirit world. They may be connected by certain meridian lines, say, such as the line that Stonehenge sits on, places where the physical and spiritual dimensions can merge. Well, that is exactly what it is all about. They try to tend to take it in the spiritual and turn it into the physical, which are the Stargates and their television shows and their movies, bringing you into the physical realm. But it is actually, in fact, yes, spiritual. You hit it right on the head. After surviving a dangerous aerobraking, as I said, through Jupiter's atmosphere, the Russian spaceship finds Discovery abandoned but undamaged, orbiting the planet close to low. Now, we're told that Jupiter, as I said before the break, has 63 confirmed moons. That's a 9, by the way, in numerology. This whole thing actually revolves around Jupiter, this whole show called 2010. And some members of the various agencies involved with space probes, Galileo and Cassini, surely have considered the potential of a plutonium ignition upon their impact, Galileo's and Cassini's impact. And there was also supposed evidence to suggest that a reaction is what secretly was hoped for. Now, William Cooper, as I said before the break, former United States Naval Intelligence officer, speaking in the early 70s, said that an elite group known as the Jason Group, or certain members of it, had been hired full-time to work on turning Jupiter into a small star. The Jason Group is, of course, comprised of the greatest science minds in the world. In 2003, physicist Jaco van der Warp publishes a report warning of what could possibly happen if Galileo, say, plunged into Jupiter, citing a report that actually says crunching the numbers, that crunched the numbers to prove it, that these sites low probability, but believe that the risk is very high to warrant a warning about a major catastrophe. 2003, we're told Galileo dives into Jupiter at the equator, but nothing happens, even though we were warned about something possibly happening after the impact. Or did something happening? I believe all of this is actually code for bringing in a new world order. It's spiritual. With the highest ranking bloodline member of the tribe of Cain being possessed by Satan or Lucifer as the leader of this new world order. The original father of that bloodline is, of course, Lucifer. As it is above, so it will be below, is the law the Illuminati go by. So, if the ritual is first enacted in the heavens, right, above, and we're all told this is, then it can happen below. Do you understand the ritual? What's more, why is creating a star from one of our gaseous giants, commonly known as the Lucifer Project? The potential star's name was first dubbed Lucifer by none other than Arthur C. Clarke in his novel 2010. Lucifer literally means light bearer. He represents rebellion, claiming godship, bringing enlightenment, mastering knowledge. Lucifer is a symbol of casting off the true God and trusting the light from within, and concept of breaking out of the subservient shell of God's dominion and claiming the universe as one's own to conquer. The seal of Satan, the sigil of Lucifer as it's known, is a magical sigil or symbol. It's used occasionally as an emblem by Satanists. So if you have the definitive connection between Lucifer, Satan, and Jupiter, the movie 2010 is all about that particular entire plot. Lucifer rising. As a matter of fact, that was a movie and a song which involved Charlie Manson, Jimmy Page, Bobby Beausoleil, Mick Jagger, his brother, and others. Anyway, back to the movie. Carnac reactivates the ship and Chandra restarts the HAL 9000 series computer, which Bowman had deactivated before this extravehicular activity pod. But a burst of energy that emerges from the monolith and heads to Earth kills him. Bowman, now an incorporeal being, having no material body or form, appears on his widow's television and wishes her farewell. He visits his terminally ill mother, too, in a nursing home and combs her hair before she dies. Chandra discovers the reason for HAL's malfunction. The National Council of Astronautics ordered the computer to conceal from Discovery's crew the fact that the mission was about the monolith. This conflicted with HAL's basic function of open, accurate processing of information, causing him to suffer a mental breakdown. I'm talking about a computer here, HAL 9000 series computer that was also a big star in 2001: A Space Odyssey. By the way, if you pick each letter beside the H and the A and the L, the letter after each of those, you end up with IBM. The Warren Buffett company, IBM. Well, he owns most of the shares. And did you hear his statement this past week? Jane and Abel are fighting over who's going to be running Berkshire Hathaway when he steps aside. And I wonder who wins, Jane or Abel, the family of man. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? But all the money's on Jane. Meaning, of course, Cain, the bloodline of Cain. Now, tensions between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, Russia now have escalated to what is technically a state of war in this movie. And the U.S. government orders Floyd, Carnac, and Chandra to move into Discovery. And both crews plan to leave, are you ready? Jupiter when a launch window opens in several weeks. Bowman, now an incorporeal being, no material body or form, appears to Floyd, warning him that they must leave Jupiter within 2 days because something wonderful will happen. Yes, not something disasterful will happen, something wonderful. Although Kirk is skeptical of Floyd's report, the monolith suddenly disappears and a growing black spot appears on the Jovian surface. The spot's a vast grouping of monoliths that is rapidly increasing in number, shrinking Jupiter's volume, increasing the planet density, and modifying the chemical properties of its atmosphere. This monolith's disappearance convinces the two crews that they must leave soon. Since neither ship can reach Earth with an early departure, they work together to use Discovery as a booster rocket for the Russian spaceship. Now, tension peaks when the computer aboard HAL, the HAL 9000 computer, is not told that the Discovery will be left stranded in space and possibly destroyed. Chandra fears that another deception may cause HAL to again malfunction. So during the launch countdown, Chandra tells the computer the truth. HAL agrees that it must sacrifice itself for the human beings on board the Russian spacecraft to complete Discovery's mission. Leonov leaves Jupiter, the Russian spacecraft, just before the monoliths engulf Jupiter and increase its density to the point that nuclear fission occurs, transforming the planet into a small star. As I said earlier in the show, that was the goal. Bowman commands HAL to repeatedly broadcast a final message to Earth. The message was this: all these worlds are yours except Europa. Attempt no landing there. Use them together. Use them in peace. A wave of hot plasma then erupts from the forming star, incinerating the United States space discovery. So, the Russian spacecraft escapes. The American spaceship Discovery is destroyed, incinerated. Interesting, isn't it? Parallel to both of the countries in the future. Space, back with more on the other side of this break on Talk Radio AM 640. We've got to call Space. It's View from Space, Talk Radio AM 640. Emails to Spaceman at 640toronto.com or space at 640toronto.com. Let me call him BB. Writes in the subject line 2010, talking about the original 2001 novel. Set around Saturn, he said, but was changed to Jupiter for the movie 2010. Interesting, isn't it? How they move out Saturn. Novel 2001, the original one was based around Saturn, the god of time and space, and changed to Jupiter, the largest planet, the king planet. Yes, this new star's miraculous appearance as this wave of hot plasma erupts from the forming star that incinerated the United States spaceship, but the Russian spacecraft escapes. Well, it inspires those on Earth the American and Soviet leaders to seek peace. And I really believe this to be more code for what will happen here on Earth. The explosion is the final conflagration here on Earth, and the new star that appears is symbolic of Lucifer's rising. Get it? The Antichrist rising along with the one world government being implemented. In the movie 2010, another moon of Jupiter, named almost the same as Europa, gradually transforms from an icy wasteland to a humid jungle covered with plant life. Out of the conflagration on Earth, the New World Order comes out of the Holy Roman Empire, which was Europe. Notice that Europa goes from an icy wasteland to a humid jungle covered with plant life. A monolith represents knowledge, occult knowledge. Stands in a swamp waiting for intelligent life forms to evolve. In this flick, there's even a cameo appearance of Arthur C. Clarke. He's depicted as a man on a bench outside the White House, which is out of frame in the pan and scan version, but visible in the letterbox version. What's more, a Time magazine cover about the American-Soviet tensions is briefly shown, in which the President of the United States is portrayed by Arthur C. Clarke, and the Soviet Premier portrayed by Stanley Kubrick, who's the producer, writer, and director of 2001: A Space Odyssey, by the way. When Clarke published this novel 2010, Odyssey 2, in 1982, he phoned Kubrick and jokingly said, "Your job is to stop anybody from making it into a movie, so I won't be bothered." Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer later worked out a contract to make a film adaptation, but Kubrick had no interest in directing it, history states, but Peter Hyams was interested and contacted both Clarke and Kubrick for their blessings. He tells the story this way: had a long conversation with Stanley Kubrick and told him what was going on. If I met with his approval, I would do the film, and if I didn't, I wouldn't. I certainly would not have thought of doing the film if I had not gotten the blessing of Stanley Kubrick. He's one of my idols, simply one of the greatest talents that ever walked the earth. He more or less said, "Sure, go do it. I don't care." And another time he said, "Don't be afraid. Just do your own movie." Arthur C. Clarke's email correspondence with Peter Hyams, director of 2010, was published in 1984, titled The Odyssey File. The making of 2010, this book illustrates Clarke's fascination with the then pioneering medium of email and his use of it to communicate with Hyams on an almost daily basis during the planning and production of the flick. Arthur C. Clarke, you see, was living in Sri Lanka while the production was taking place in California. This book also includes Arthur C. Clarke's list of top science fiction films ever made. But in order to give the publishers enough lead time to have it available for the release of the movie, the book terminated while the movie was still in pre-production. At the point of the last email, Arthur C. Clarke had not yet read the script, and Roy Schneider was the only actor who had been cast. So to the Illuminati, everything they've created in this world of the third dimension called Earth is just that, symbolic, and has a meaning, just like the heavens above us. There's a glimpse of the future of the International Space Station, too, that symbolizes sovereign nations of the world's ability and desire to get along and work together, or how undesirable and the inability to get along to work together. It's, of course, the modular structure now in low Earth orbit above us, whose component was launched in 1998 by the consortium of many nations, 5 nations. And it's now got the distinction of being the largest artificial man-made body ever put in orbit. I'm talking about the International Space Station. And the United States said earlier this year that they would keep the ISS running until at least 2024. But Russia is looking to go it alone and create its own orbital space station. Did you know this? Another thing already in the plans. The EU and Russia are also said to be working on a plan together for a 2-mission ExoMars probe shot to Mars, the war planet, Mars. So what do you make of that? Mars, the war planet, the destination of the EU and Russia. They're both planning to go there together. But it's not to Mars, it's to war. The ISS program began as a joint project, of course, of 5 participating nations: States, Russia, Japan, the EU, and Canada. Now, the Russians and the U.S. are the biggest contributors. For instance, the only way now to get up to the station with personnel and to replenish it with supplies is controlled by Russia. But the ownership and the use of the space station itself, the physical structure, is established by intergovernmental treaties and agreements. Now, the space station itself, the physical structure, is actually divided into 2 pieces, 2 chunks. There's the Russian orbital part and the United States orbital part. Now, as of January of last year, 2014, the Americans' part of the ISS is funded until 2024. Russia has endorsed the continuing operation of ISIS through to 2024 as well, but they're now proposing using elements of the Russian orbital piece of the ISS to make a new Russian space station called OPSEC. Before the eventual decommissioning of the ISS, supposed to be beginning in the early 2020s, the Russian Federal Space Agency plans to detach, disassemble, take back the Russian-made pieces of the ISS and have that as the basis for the Russian-only new space station. So there is a split coming, a huge split coming very soon. And I don't believe that this will last until 2024. I believe things are going to change before that happens. Now, there's some interesting things of the movie and the differences in the novel of this 2010 film and novel. The film 2010 omits the space voyage of the landing of the Chinese spaceship Tian. Yes, the Chinese are up there too. Of course, they figure prominently in this coming global war. Now, as I said, the film 2010 leaves out the space voyage and the landing of the Chinese spaceship on the Jovian moon Europa before the Russians even arrive. And the accidental destruction of the Tian, the Chinese space station, or spaceship, by the non-intelligent life forms living there. Yes, the Chinese arrived before the Russians, but the non-intelligent life forms living there destroys them. Isn't that intriguing? Since the King James Version of the Bible says that the kings in the east, meaning China, and the kings of the north, meaning Russia, will attack the Antichrist over the control of Jerusalem. Exactly what's played out in the skies. in this movie, 2010, the Russians and the Americans and the Chinese fighting over this area, this moon of Jupiter's, the king planet. Also, the description of David Bowman's exploration of the Jovian system, in which he observes various life forms in the oceans of Europa and the atmosphere of Jupiter. The film also omits almost all of the romantic physical relationships between the astronauts. In the novel, Tanya Kurbuk, Queen Elizabeth's best friend, Mirren, is married to the navigator and has taken the surname Orlova. And in the book, Walter Kurnow is bisexual and he has a relationship with Maxim Berlovsky, but breaks it off when he learns that Xenia Marchenko is in love with Maxim. You have to get the little soap opera love triangle going on there, too. And at the end of the book, you find that Maxim gets married to Xenia, and Kumar gets married to the doctor, Katerina Rudenko. Also omitted from the film is the ending of Dr. Floyd's marriage while he's on board the mission to Jupiter due to his wife's natural feeling of abandonment from leaving her and their son go on a year-long space flight. The voicemail letters to his family that are portrayed in the movie replace moments in the novel where Dr. Floyd corresponds with an old friend back on Earth. And the close montage of Earth scenes shows Floyd, his wife, and their son on a beach looking at a new star, which is obviously the New World Order. Space, back with more on the other side of the break on Talk Radio AM 640. What do we got to call? Space, this is a View from Space on Talk Radio AM 640. Final segment in tonight's show. So as I say, some pretty crazy things are happening in the movies that really are pointing to what our future is going to be. Interesting, isn't it? As I've already stated, the sequel to 2001, a Space Odyssey, called 2010, the year we make contact, a joint American-Soviet expedition sent to Jupiter to discover what went wrong with the USS Discovery against a backdrop of growing global tensions. Among the mysteries of the expedition explained are the appearance of a huge black monolith in Jupiter's orbit and the fate of HAL, the 9000 series computer, and the Discovery's sentient brainchild, the master, this computer, the rise of the machines. Because that's exactly what they're doing in our economy now. Robots are taking over more and more of the menial tasks of human beings. In other words, the elite rich are eliminating the worker from the system. In the year 2001, David Bowen was taken by the Jupiter monolith and transformed into a powerful being. Yeah, he became a god. You see, this portrayed in the movie as man's reincarnation. Now, in the year 2010, the movie, Dr. Heywood Floyd, the man held responsible for Discovery's failure, is going to Jupiter. He and his crewmates must reactivate the psychotic HAL 9000 computer so that they might learn what happened, and they must find out the meaning of David Bowman's last transmission, which was, "My God, it's full of stars." Bowman's "My God, it's full of stars" is distorted, presumably because he's rapidly accelerating to near light speed as he falls into the wormhole. The book actually describes it as a wormhole, the same concept I spoke about in the Stargate plots. Actually, what an Earth observer would hear and record would be your voice rapidly slowing down, like a cassette player running on dead batteries or dying batteries. Also, the carrier wave signal would redshift to lower and lower frequency, forcing you to constantly adjust your receiver. Believe it or not, the BBC television had this very subject on as a news story not long ago. They had, of course, one of their Illuminati-controlled experts to deliver the news. The premise was that scientists have now discovered proof that as you go higher into space, time passes by quicker. It's not scientifically proven at all, merely the Illuminati confirming what Arthur C. Clarke imagined in his mind. It fit with the plan, so it became a scientific fact. That's how these things are done. Now, with this Russian situation, there's a glimpse into our near future. In 2010, the movie The President addresses a joint session of Congress. And the script goes this way. Victor Milson is the one who speaks. The President addressed a joint session of Congress today. He said he wasn't going to back down on the blockade. I don't know which was scarier, the speech or the Congress cheering it. He evoked Lincoln. Whenever a president is going to get us into serious trouble, they always use Lincoln. I honestly don't know if we're going to be at war or not. It's terrifying to hope that the Russians are less crazy than we are, when they are clearly crazy. Right now, I think you're in a safer place than we are. I just hope that there is an Earth to return to. Then later, he says again, this is a most difficult announcement. As you know, things have not been going well back home. He means on planet Earth. Well, it's gotten worse. A lot worse. Yesterday, a Soviet destroyer challenged the blockade. Several warning shots were fired across her bow. She did not respond. A second volley was fired. There still was no response. None. The nuclear destroyer USS Cunningham launched 2 of her Falcon missiles. Both struck the Soviet vessel amidships. She broke into 2 and sunk. 800 of her crew were lost. This morning, an American surveillance satellite was struck by a Soviet laser fired from the Sergei Kirov space station. The American satellite was destroyed. The United States has broken off diplomatic relations with Russia. All ambassadors have been recalled. The Soviet ambassador has been expelled, along with the entire staff. All American air defense and satellite defense forces are on full alert. The Premier made a televised address and said that technically a state of war exists between the 2 countries. All American personnel are ordered to leave Soviet territory immediately or they'll be placed under arrest. All Russian personnel are similarly ordered to evacuate American territory. As a result, by direct presidential order, the 3 of you must leave the Russian space station Leonov now, the spaceship now. No Russian citizen is allowed to remain on or is allowed to enter the Discovery. This order is effective immediately. The launch window for re-entry is 28 days. The Discovery has enough fuel for a low-consumption trajectory. HAL appears to be reactivated on board and is functioning well enough to operate the onboard systems. The The Russian spaceship, the Leonov, has enough fuel for a low-consumption trajectory that will arrive 12 months earlier. The launch windows are critical for both spacecraft. Only communications of an emergency distress nature are allowed between the Russian spaceship and the American spaceship. I know you people are caught in the middle of this. In a sense, we all are. I wish there was something I could do. The only thing left for us is to pray. Pray for the safety of our families, for our countries, for our planet. May God forgive us and protect us. You see, the World War had begun between America and Russia. That's what we're building to now. That took 10 years to program people for, and not everyone watched it, but of course it had the recurring themes that are in every single one of the other movies or the other Illuminati-controlled mass media television shows that are broadcast. They're programming us to accept a war and are taking us to it at breakneck speed. Because according to the agenda of the Illuminati, we are on the cusp of an incredible global change, a crossroads where they are, even now, in the midst of making decisions which will influence all of life on Earth. They believe they are about to open the doors of what they will call the mental and emotional prisons, which have supposedly confined the human race for thousands of years. This will allow them to totally control the events on Earth, so that they'll be able to complete their agenda for the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, and physical enslavement of every man, woman, and child on the planet. What little power we have left, they are taking away. As I said earlier in this segment, they are even eliminating the worker from the system. It's an economy that doesn't need you. This, they believe, can be done and will be done through a one world government, one army, one central bank, one currency, all underpinned by what some will say a microchipped population surveillance society. Never before possible, but now, because of the new technology, is. Personally, I don't believe it to be a microchip. I believe the mark instead will be magnetic ink, a tattoo. Magnetic ink. This is the mark that the Bible speaks of in Revelation 13, whereby no person will be able to buy or sell without it. The momentum for the centralized control of global politics, business, banking, military, and media is gathering pace by the hour. I was going to say, are we ready? But no, you'll never be ready for this. This has been A View from Space and Talk Radio AM 640. Coast to Coast is next. I'm Space, and I'm